What is going on, everybody? My name is Michael Levan. Thank you so much for joining me today. And this video is going to be all about a 2020 wrap up for cloud computing and cloud development. So with that, let's jump right in and start talking about 5 different things here. The first is GitHub Codespaces. So GitHub Codespaces is really cool, and it was a really great implementation on Microsoft's part for GitHub. So what it allows you to do is you can literally go and write code, install extensions, everything that you would in VS Code locally, except you don't have to install anything locally anymore. You don't have to do any of that. You can just use a simple web IDE to do that. So definitely go ahead and check that out if you're writing any code, Terraform, Go, Python, PowerShell, it works with anything. The next is definitely Azure Arc for Kubernetes. So the direction that we're seeing cloud computing going in right now, it's pretty apparent that everybody's now understanding that hybrid will be the approach. There's gonna, I think there's always gonna be something on-prem. I don't see there never being any on-prem servers ever again. And I think a lot of the cloud computing providers like Microsoft are starting to see that. So now they're using things like Azure Arc, and specifically Azure Arc for Kubernetes. So if you have an on-prem Kubernetes cluster or a Kubernetes cluster anywhere, like in AWS or in GCP or something like that, you can literally manage it right from the Azure portal. And that's very, very cool. The third thing is, and one of my favorite things, I know you guys hear me talk about it a lot, is infrastructure as software. So infrastructure as software is pretty much the identical thing to infrastructure as code, except you write your code in a general purpose programming language. So for example, let's say, I don't know, you're creating a Azure virtual network, or you're creating Azure file share or something like that, or a virtual machine. Maybe you would do that in Terraform or in Ansible or something like that. Well, if you're a developer and you're like, you know what, I kind of want to do this in like Go or Python or JavaScript or something like that, you absolutely can. And you can do that in AWS CDK. You can do that in Pulumi. You can do that in HashiCorp CDK. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do infrastructure software now. And the key thing here is that there's always been ways to do that. There's always been SDKs with like Python, for example. Like let's take a look at Python with Boto 3 for AWS. You could always create cloud resources, but the big problem was that there was no state. So with Terraform, you have a state. You have metadata of your environment and what it's supposed to look like. With the SDKs, we didn't have that. But with infrastructure software, with tools like AWS CDK, with tools like Pulumi, HashiCorp CDK, you now can store a state, so you can successfully write all of your infrastructure, all of your cloud services using a general purpose programming language. Now, a fourth thing, and again, something that's near and dear to my heart because I come from an infrastructure background and I've moved into more of a development role, is the need for sysadmins and infrastructure engineers to learn how to code. So I think this was a long time coming. We've kind of always been seeing this. I mean, especially with like PowerShell and Bash and stuff like that. Like we've always seen sysadmins and infrastructure folks needing to code, but now we're seeing it more than ever. In 2020, I think that was a huge year for us to be able to take a look and say, okay, infrastructure folks, we all got to know how to code now. Whether you want to call it scripting, whether you want to call it programming, whether you want to call it automation, code is code, functions are functions, and variables are variables. So whatever you want to call it, it is needed right now. So going into 2021, if you're not coding, you know what? That's perfectly fine. You don't need to write the next Instagram or Twitter or something like that. You literally just need to know how to, use basic functions and variables and automate yourself out of the click, next, finish. Finally, one of the things that I really liked this year was the specialty and career-driven certifications. So we've been seeing them for the past few years or so, but I think that like we're really starting to see them a lot now in Azure and AWS, for example. There's a lot of certifications that are specific for the career paths. So for example, Azure has a bunch of certifications that you can literally pick. Like, do you want to be a solutions architect? Do you want to be a developer? Do you want to be a DevOps pro? Do you want to be a cloud engineer pro? And then you can go and you can take these certifications, and these certifications are based off of best practices for what this career path is supposed to look like right now. So with that, that's pretty much my wrap up. These were kind of like 5 different things that I thought that were really cool this year. There's, of course, a plethora of different things that were really cool this year, but these were the 5 things that I think really stuck out to me. And I think going into the new year, the specialty and career-driven certifications, the coding for infrastructure and sysadmin folks, it's going to be very crucial. where we're constantly seeing like all the tools that are coming out, all the platforms that are coming out, everything that's happening. It's developer focused, and that doesn't mean, again, I'm gonna stress this, that does not mean that you need to build the next Instagram or Twitter or something like that. Simply means you just need to know how to automate. If you're using Terraform, PowerShell, Bash, Python, Go, JavaScript, whatever you want. Thank you so much for watching. I really, truly do appreciate everybody that has subscribed this year, everybody that has put their faith in me to be able to teach them a thing or two. I hope that I was able to do that. Again, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, and we'll see you in the new year.